I have in my mind a quotation that I read many years ago and that has always stayed with me. In many ways, all of my own writing has been but a footnote to this extraordinary quotation, as well as my attempt to come to some real understanding of it. The quotation is by the great 20th century Japanese magician Tenkai Ishida, and it is deceptively and beautifully simple. Tenkai said, "Magic is not tricks, it is a way." Well, if my goal in magic is to become a better magician, a more effective performer of magic before audiences, then must I also not realize that the way of the magician is a way of growing toward that goal? Instantaneous changes in our performing ability, except in the rarest of inspired cases, do not typically happen to most of us. If we want to see some changes in our performances, we have to work to make that happen. I don't doubt that there are performers who are born to be performers. Among the many professional magicians I know, almost all of those who have what I would call innate performing talents still had to work much harder than you would ever imagine to develop them and to hone them. And so, doesn't it amaze you that so many magicians admit all this in their words and yet still, in their actions, behave as though magic is an easy way? I think the path of growth toward becoming a better performer is a difficult way for most of us because it requires so much thought and work and more thought and more work. It demands that we try and fail and then try again and probably fail again and then just keep on working and trying with absolutely no guarantee of final success. You might wonder why any magician is crazy enough even to follow this way, and my answer is they have to. It isn't so much a decision as an inward calling. Most magicians, I think, do look for the easy way, and that usually means imitating and stealing from the acts of other more successful performers. Imitating and stealing is the easy way. You look around and see something that you like and then you take it. And this something that you like can be a particular effect, an entire routine, or a single line. The problem with this easy way is that it is only rarely successful theatrically. What works for one performer rarely works successfully for someone else. Material that expresses one performer's persona, if taken by someone else, usually serves to conceal rather than to reveal their own persona. To make a long story short, I think that the real path toward excellent performing is difficult because it is the path where you seek to be completely and thoroughly yourself, the person you already are, because that person is unique and special. You are the only you, after all, in the entire cosmos. Well, you might ask, where shall I begin? There are a million places to begin. It only matters that you decide on one of them and stick with it for a while. One place to begin is by looking at the magic that you already perform. Look at it one effect at a time and examine what you're doing and what you're saying with ruthless honesty, and especially with the realization that there are no unimportant moments. You see, you need to understand deep down in your bones that every moment counts. In Thornton Wilder's 1938 play, Our Town. The main character, Emily, dies in childbirth and goes to that part of the stage where the dead sit. There, from those already dead, Emily learns that she can return and relive any part of her life. Those who are already dead warn her not to do this, because the experience of reliving our lives can be deeply painful. Emily refuses to listen, and so she is cautioned to select an unimportant day. She chooses her 12th birthday and begins not only to relive it, but also at the same time to watch herself reliving it, knowing all along what the future will bring. As predicted, the experience is deeply and sadly painful. She says, "Oh, Mama, just look at me 1 minute as though you really saw me. Just for a minute now, we're all together. Mama, just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another." And then she says, I can't go on. It goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. I didn't realize. So all that was going on, and we never noticed. And at the end, she asks, do any human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every minute. Emily discovered that there are no unimportant moments in life. In much the same way, in a magic presentation, every moment counts. There are simply no unimportant moments. Every moment is either contributing to or detracting from the magician's goal of creating a wonder and a mystery that produces a magical experience. This brings us, I think, to what is one of the greatest problems with most magical performances, whether amateur or professional. Too many magicians seem to believe that a strong ending, a strong magical climax, is enough to save a boring beginning and middle. It rarely is. And the reason is simple to understand. The show that the spectators are seeing is the entire process, from the magician's initial appearance to his final departure. From the audience's point of view, everything that happens within that time, absolutely everything, is the show. And so, every moment counts. There are no unimportant moments. Practically, this means that in my own work, I mentally break down each of the effects that I do. Now, I might break them down in terms of units of time, or I might alternately divide the effect in terms of the various actions that are required to perform it. Either way, I look at these smaller pieces and ask myself whether they are contributing to or distracting from the larger effect that I am trying to create. We magicians who live at the end of the 20th century are truly fortunate with the technology. We have the technology to give us profound assistance in this work. Audio or video recording of your performances, and then listening with the greatest attention to detail, is a tremendous help in learning what we're doing well and what we're doing poorly. Great attention to detail. These, of course, are the magic words. No moment is unimportant. In a performance, every moment requires a decision among many different possibilities. It's a fascinating process because each conscious decision is an act which reinforces our own personal growth. The best way to do this, in my view, is to write out the verbal presentation for each magic effect. When the effect script is in front of me on paper, I find that I personally can look at each sentence even more objectively. This, needless to say, as I know from working with many magic students over the years, requires real dedication because it is a lot of work. And it's the kind of work that many performers simply don't enjoy. For those students who really do hate to write, and maybe even slightly phobic about it, I think that one can also work with an audio recorder. The aim is to create a script, a word-for-word presentation that you may follow. After all, once you have a script, a real script, a strange and wonderful thing happens. Your mind becomes free and clear. It loses the sense of inward worry, the feeling that you might really have to think of something clever to say after all. But you see, if you don't have anything clever to say, there's always the track of the script to provide inward comfort and an outward show. And if you do think of something clever to say it. This brings us to the answer to a rather interesting question. The question is, why is it, do you think, that so many magicians have problems with timing? We watch their performances and say to ourselves that their timing is off. Why do you suppose that is? Why is timing a problem for so many? The answer, in terms of what we've been thinking about, is that timing is a problem for them simply because they have nothing to time. Since most performers don't have real scripts, they have only the roughest and most imprecise tracks in their head. How can we talk to them about timing and pauses and on which word to put the emphasis in the sentence? This rather demands that there is a sentence. With most performers, I'm afraid, there isn't. The general idea is in their heads, I suppose, but the actual words that come out of their mouths are pretty much being made up on the spot. And the truth is, very few performers have the ability to do this entertainingly and still retain any sense of precision in their show. To work on our timing, the truth is, we must have something to time. For me, this means a script for each effect. Once I have each effect, I can ask myself and answer all sorts of fascinating questions about where to put the pauses, the smiles, the serious looks, where to put all of it. Working on my timing and deciding where to slow down, when to speed up my speech, when to freeze and pause, and let silence generate its own power. This kind of working with words has always been one of my favorite magical activities. I think it is not only really fun, but deeply enjoyable and a source of great personal pleasure. If we want to grow in the art of magic, and if we want our magical performances to have greater impact, we need finally to move beyond thought to action. Thinking only gets us so far, and then a wall appears that thinking can never surmount. That wall is only surmounted by action, by doing, by regular and conscious practice and rehearsal. The magician really is created one effect at a time, a slow but hopefully loving process of involvement with an inexhaustible craft that is magic. For as Tenkai said, magic is not tricks, it is a way.